Ruby Brown, the family heiress, has hated my guts since we were kids, but even she couldn't escape her fate of marrying me. To protest, she ditched me at our wedding to go race cars. After we were married, she did every wild and reckless thing she could think of. I became the laughingstock of our social circle. Ruby watched the whole spectacle with malicious glee. "You brought this on yourself," she'd say, "so deal with it." Everyone, including her, thought I would hold on to her for the rest of my life. On our 5th anniversary, I handed her a set of divorce papers. I smiled, relieved. "I can finally get rid of you." That night, Ruby went ballistic and tore our house apart with her bare hands. By the time I stepped onto the yacht, the party was in full swing. In the center of the crowd, Ruby was lounging on a sofa, a handsome young guy's arm draped around her neck. Men and women held up champagne glasses, chanting "kiss, kiss, kiss," over and over. The guy's cheeks were flushed, his eyes practically begging for it. Ruby's eyes narrowed slightly as her gaze swept over the crowd. She smirked. "Don't get crazy. My husband's watching." The group turned, saw me, and immediately quieted down, mumbling awkwardly, "Hey, Julian." The guy glanced at me but didn't move his arm. He just held her tighter and chuckled. "Doesn't that make it more exciting?" The crowd erupted again, all of them waiting for the show to begin. Everyone knew that my marriage to Ruby was a complete sham. She was shamelessly promiscuous, so the men around her weren't afraid of me, the husband in name only. I ignored him and looked straight at Ruby. "The paparazzi are all over the marina, just waiting for you to dock," I said calmly. "Coming with me?" A playful smile touched Ruby's lips. She didn't move. Seeing this, the guy got even bolder, leaning into her chest and shooting me a defiant grin. Lights twinkled on the water as a speedboat approached. Long-lensed cameras focused in, flashes firing, blindingly bright. I curled my fingers into a fist, my nails digging into my palm. They got the shot. I could already see the storm that was heading my way. Ruby's mocking voice reached my ears. "All right, Mr. Wilson." She suddenly stood up. "Ruby," the guy called out, his voice laced with disappointment. Ruby paid him no mind. She walked over to me, wrapped an arm around my waist, and leaned in close. "Home?" I could clearly see the wicked amusement dancing in her eyes. She didn't seem to have much affection for the guy. She just deliberately let the paparazzi take those pictures. She knew better than anyone that whenever she caused a scandal, I was the one who paid the price. And she got a sick thrill out of it every single time. I kept my expression neutral and took her hand from my waist. "Let's go." Ruby let out a short, sharp laugh, dripping with sarcasm. I pretended not to hear and led her onto the speedboat. In public, I was always the composed and respectable Mr. Wilson. That was the unbreakable rule of this marriage. It wasn't until we docked and got in the car that I let go of her hand. She immediately grabbed it back, lacing our fingers together tightly. "Stay in character," she teased. "If we're putting on a show, let's make it a good one." I frowned slightly and turned to look out the window, letting her have her way. We drove home like that. The moment we stepped inside, Ruby grew even more brazen. She raised our intertwined hands, forcing me back against the wall. Her body pressed against mine, aggressive and domineering, trapping me. In the dim light, I could see the raw excitement in her eyes. "Ruby, I'm a little tired tonight," I said softly, exhausted. Before I could finish, she bit down on my collarbone as punishment. Her muffled laugh was a sneer. "Mr. Wilson, it's time for your marital duties. Try to be a little more cooperative." I had no right to refuse. Every time she called me Mr. Wilson, she was reminding me to remember my place. Since I had willingly put on these shackles, I had no right to call a stop to it. So, she could always torment me without consequence. Ruby kept at it until the early hours of the morning, but I still woke up early out of habit. The other side of the bed was empty. We would sleep together but never sleep together. Ruby once told me with a smirk, "I don't want to see your face the moment I wake up. It would ruin my whole day." I stared at the ceiling for a few minutes, then reached for my phone. I opened up X, and just as I expected, Last night's news was already going viral. It had only been a few minutes and we were already trending. In the photo, the guy was sitting on Ruby's lap while I stood across from them, watching. The comments section was a battlefield. This heiress is wild. She's got her husband acting as a lookout while she picks up hot guys.
OMG, I'm crying.
She takes her husband with her even when she's out partying. You don't see that kind of devotion anymore. Someone tell the hopeless romantics to log off. Wake up, girl. Doesn't anyone feel bad for Julian Wilson? This picture just breaks my heart. LMAO, she didn't even want to marry him. He's the one who shamelessly clung to her. He deserves it. Exactly. No dignity at all. How can he not divorce her after this? So pathetic. The funniest part is he used to have this whole PR campaign about being a cultured gentleman. What an embarrassment. Wait. The heiress is a total player, and you're all blaming the guy. Let me be the voice of reason here. These high society marriages are complicated. We're just spectators, so let's just enjoy the drama. The internet trolls were having a field day. I was used to it. I was about to close the app when I saw the trending topic vanish. The Brown family's PR team was awake. I got back from my morning run just as Ruby was waking up. She was leaning against the kitchen counter with a cup of coffee, her silk robe hanging loosely, revealing her delicate collarbones and pale skin. She looked chill and captivating. She glanced at me, her eyelids heavy, and smirked. If I'd known you had so much stamina, Mr. Wilson, last night, Ruby, I cut her off, knowing nothing good ever came out of that mouth. We're leaving in 30 minutes. The Brown family was extremely traditional. It was a rule that no matter how busy everyone was, the whole family had to gather at the estate every Sunday. It was set in stone. Even a rebel like Ruby never broke it. Oh, Ruby said, her eyes narrowing playfully. Well, good luck. I knew what she meant. I went upstairs to shower in silence. On the way there, Ruby was glued to her phone. I quietly looked out the window, preparing for the storm. As the car pulled into the estate, Ruby put her phone away. She couldn't even be bothered to keep up appearances, ditching me to walk into the main hall alone. When I entered, she was slouched on the sofa in a completely undignified manner. She must have said something funny, because Grandpa Brown was beaming. Grandpa, I said politely. Grandpa Brown nodded. Your in-laws are waiting for you in the study. Go on. Okay. I knew exactly what was coming, and the instigator of it all, Ruby, just sat there with a smile on her face, not even bothering to look up. When I came out of the study, there was a fresh handprint on my cheek, and I could taste blood in my mouth. Mrs. Brown was a refined woman when she hit you. She aimed for the face. Afterward, she was once again the picture of elegance. Her every word was dripping with condescension. Julian, you've disappointed me so much. What kind of man can't even hold onto his own wife's heart? And you indulge her nonsense? Is that how it should be? My patience is wearing thin. Standing by the study door, I could vaguely hear their conversation inside. Mr. Brown, who hadn't said a word earlier, spoke up. What are you doing? Why are you blaming him for what our daughter did? Who else should I blame? Mrs. Brown sneered. Before she married him, she was wild, sure, but she never went this far. She complained, you all forced her to marry a man she doesn't love. Of course she's going to act out. Mr. Brown sighed. Dad was the one who arranged this marriage. There was nothing I could do. If you can't do anything, then think of something. She's the only daughter I have left. Her voice cracked. I just want her to be happy, not tied to a man she doesn't love. I turned and walked away. As I walked down the long corridor, I suddenly thought of Luna. The pain on my lips seemed to spread to my heart, an unbearable ache. At the end of the hall, by an open window, Ruby stood with her arms crossed. The spring sunlight filtered through the trees outside, casting her face in shifting light and shadow. I was about to walk past without a word, but she grabbed my wrist. The hand holding the cigarette brushed against the corner of my mouth. A soft TSK escaped her throat. Wow, they actually hit you this time. The smoke stung my eyes, and I pushed her hand away. Ruby's narrow eyes watched me. A hint of a smile playing on her lips, sharp and dangerous. Julian Wilson, don't you know how to fight back? Her low voice was laced with a lazy amusement, impossible to read. I laughed along with her. Do I have the right to fight back? Ruby didn't say anything. She waited until her cigarette burned down, then stubbed it out in an ashtray by the window. You're right, she said, her voice flat, but with a harsh edge. You brought this on yourself. You deserve it. She left without a backward glance. With her leaving like that, I had no doubt the Brown family would blame me. Under the guise of teaching me how to be a good husband, they would belittle me with thinly veiled arrogance. I accepted it all with a calm demeanor. Some debts can eventually be repaid. Some people you will never have to see again in this lifetime. After leaving the Brown estate, I had the driver take me to the care facility as usual. On the way, I got a call from them. Mr. Wilson, your father's condition has taken a turn for the worse. You need to get here as soon as you can. I gripped my phone, my heart plummeting. Rushing into the room, I saw the frail, emaciated man on the bed, and my eyes instantly stung with tears. What happened? I had just been here 2 days ago, and he seemed so much better. The nurse couldn't look me in the eye. I'm so sorry, Mr. Wilson. I wasn't watching him closely enough. He saw the news online. For years, even when Ruby had just stabbed me in the heart, I would still put on a happy face for my father, blushing as I told him how well she treated me. I had always been a good actor. Julian, he said, trying to lift his hand. I grabbed it, my voice choking as I spoke. Dad. He patted the back of my hand comfortingly, tears welling up in his cloudy eyes. I regret forcing you. I thought you and that girl were childhood sweethearts, and you liked her so much. I thought I was finding you the best possible match, but I never imagined. He was breathing heavily after saying so much. I wiped his tears away and soothed him. Dad, it's all in the past. Let's not talk about it. The Brown family never wanted to acknowledge this marriage, and with Ruby treating you like this, it must be so hard for you there. Isn't it? The more I wiped, the more his tears fell. Not at all, I said, forcing a smile. I'm the great son-in-law of the Brown family. I have fame, I have money. I couldn't be more comfortable. He looked at me for a long time, then turned his head away, unable to bear it. Julian, my son, I'm so sorry. The silence in the room was suffocating. After a long pause, he asked cautiously, could you ask Ruby to come see me? My heart felt like it was being pierced by 1,000 needles. A dense, unstoppable pain. Okay. I walked to the door and took out my phone to call Ruby. I called again and again, but each call went unanswered, like a stone dropped into the ocean. I called her office. Her secretary said, Ms. Brown had a trip to Africa scheduled right after she left the estate. Her plane hasn't landed yet. What is she doing there? She said, she's going hunting. I held the phone silent for a long time. My father drifted in and out of consciousness. When he was awake, he would murmur, Ruby? I kept trying to call her, sending message after message. In the spring, the nights are long and the days are short. He never got to see her. In the lonely, silent hours of that spring morning, I lost my father forever. Thanks to my status as the Brown family's son-in-law, the Wilson family gave him a grand funeral. After the service, Ruby finally called back. I didn't answer. I just let it ring over and over until it stopped. The next day, I went back to my family's house to quietly sort through my father's belongings. He'd been sick for so many years that his room was covered in dust. The person was gone and his things were old. In the evening, someone pushed the door open and stood there silently for a long time. I didn't turn around. Ruby, I said flatly, I don't want to see you right now. The person behind me didn't say anything. After a moment, they left. I dealt with all of my father's things, taking only a thick photo album. As I passed through the living room, the Wilson family was gathered around a boy of about 10. He looked unhappy, and they were all cooing over him. When they saw me standing at the top of the stairs, their smiles vanished awkwardly. My mother beckoned, and a pretty woman quickly pulled the boy away. Julian, she said, gesturing to the dining table. Stay for dinner. No, thank you. I looked at her quietly. It was as if, overnight, All my hatred for her had disappeared too. "Mom," I said softly, "this is the last time I'll call you that." Her face instantly hardened. "What did you say?" I ignored her and smiled to myself. I don't owe the Wilson family anything anymore. She was used to me being obedient and docile. This sudden change was hard for her to accept. "You're cutting ties with the family?" "Yes." I turned away coldly. Ruby didn't even glance at her, just grabbed my arm and strode out. Back in the car, neither of us spoke. The shadows of the trees flickered across the windows. In the silence, Ruby pulled out a pack of cigarettes and stuck one between her lips. The lighter clicked open and shut, but she didn't light the cigarette. Her eyes were downcast. "I'm sorry. My phone was off the whole time I was away." As far as I could remember, this was the first time in our 5 years of marriage that Ruby had ever apologized sincerely. Usually, when she said sorry, it was with a careless, mocking tone, completely disingenuous, purely to piss me off. The great heiress had gone to the African savannah to unleash her wild side. There was no room for the mundane realities of life and death in a life as colorful as hers. According to the script, I, as Mr. Wilson, was supposed to be understanding. But right now, my heart was in turmoil, and I had no desire to respond to her at all. Ruby's brow was furrowed. She couldn't seem to light the cigarette, so she just took it from her lips and crushed it in her hand. Annoyed, she squeezed so hard her knuckles turned white. "Julian, can you just—" A ringing phone cut her off. She seemed to have a simmering anger with nowhere to go. She answered the phone and snapped, "What the hell is wrong with you?" The enclosed space amplified the voice. I could clearly hear a bright, cocky male voice on the other end. "Ruby." He wasn't scared of her at all. His voice rose in a pout. "What was that all about, leaving me alone in Africa?" Ruby raised an eyebrow, annoyed. "Serves you right. Ruby, you're heartless," the guy accused, fuming. "I don't care. You have to come get me." "In your dreams," Ruby scoffed. "Just you wait. I'll take this to your husband. Don't you regret it," he threatened. Hearing this, Ruby's eyes slowly narrowed, but a smile played on her lips, casting a chilling aura over her face. "Go ahead," she said lazily. The guy seemed unsure of what she was thinking, and his bravado deflated a bit. "I'm not threatening you, it's just—" Just then, Ruby pushed the car door open, stepped out, and cradled the phone on her shoulder as she lit a cigarette. The voice faded as the wind rushed in through the cracked window. My best friend Aaron's call came through. "Julian, Ms. Brown is trending again." Ruby's phone call had already explained everything. She had spent the last 10+ days in Africa with a man. It was no surprise that rumors were flying. I opened X. The photo that greeted me was of Ruby playing with a hunting rifle, a wild, handsome guy holding the barrel, the two of them standing intimately side by side. I recognized the guy in the picture, Ethan Ito, brash, bold, and untamable. He and Ruby were two of a kind. I had met him twice before. The first time was in London. I had traveled thousands of miles to find her. One night, Ruby was drunk, and she playfully pinned me against the floor-to-ceiling window. "Know how to kiss?" she asked with a wicked grin, luring me in step by step. "Relax, part your lips." I resisted shyly, which she seemed to find incredibly alluring. Ruby's eyes darkened, and her kiss grew more frantic. Just as desire was about to ignite, the guy with the earring burst in. "Ruby, what are you doing?" he stammered. Ruby wasn't annoyed at the interruption. She just laughed. "Teaching my fiancé how to kiss." The guy looked at me, then back at Ruby. Like a wounded animal, he grabbed a bottle of liquor from the bar and smashed it on the floor. He glared at Ruby. Through it all, Ruby was just a spectator, calmly lighting a cigarette to watch the show. The drama started and ended, and silence fell. A strange thought occurred to me. He had a key card to Ruby's apartment. Her lingering kiss was still on my lips. "Do you like him?" I asked. Ruby tilted her head and smirked. "Trying to control me?" I pressed my lips together, not knowing what to say. Seeing my discomfort, the smile on her lips grew wider. "Julian Wilson, you can't be too greedy." To Ruby, our relationship was nothing more than a business contract, devoid of any emotion. For me to want the benefits that came with being Mr. Wilson and emotional fidelity was, in her eyes, far too greedy. I looked down, offering no defense. The second time I saw Ethan Ito was at my wedding to Ruby. That day, Ruby left me and all the guests standing there and walked out of the banquet hall. I chased after her, trying to get her to stay. A flashy motorcade of luxury cars, filled with the sons and daughters of the elite, was parked at the entrance. Ruby held up the hem of her wedding dress, a cruel smile on her lips. "Congratulations, Mr. Wilson." She swung her leg over a motorcycle, and the engine roared to life, echoing down the street. Ethan Ito ran his fingers over his eyebrow and gave me a dazzling smile. "See ya, brother-in-law." I stood there in the warm spring sun, watching the motorcycle speed away. Ethan had been chasing her for so many years. His devotion was truly something else. Scandals about the Brown family heiress were nothing new. But to take a man hunting in Africa during her own father-in-law's funeral, that was not just promiscuous, it was heartless. I watched silently, my heart turning to ice. The car door opened and closed. The faint scent of citrus she brought in with her cut through the lingering smell of smoke. I didn't look up, but I couldn't ignore the intense gaze fixed on my face. After that phone call, Ruby's strange anger seemed to have subsided. She spoke as if nothing had happened. "Come with me to the cemetery tomorrow." My fingers paused on the screen. "No need." Ruby's voice lifted.
Mel?
I looked up and saw the searching look in her eyes. She was determined to find some hidden emotion on my calm face. "I just don't think it's necessary," I said, turning off my phone. "What's missed is missed. The time has passed. No amount of making up for it will change anything." Ruby half closed her eyes. "And what if I say it is necessary?" She was pushing it, which I hadn't expected. Usually, Ruby was so flippant, rarely bothering with any one thing for too long. I pressed my lips together. "Whatever you want." When she wanted to do something, no one could stop her. The next day, we arrived at the cemetery. Ruby stopped me as I was unbuckling my seatbelt. "I'll go by myself." Watching her elegant figure disappear among the green trees of the cemetery, I thought, Ruby can be really hard to understand sometimes. The phone rang without warning. Ruby hadn't taken it with her, it was on the center console. I glanced at it. "Ethan Ito." No one answered, but he kept calling, again and again, the ringing echoing through the car. I couldn't stand it. I put on my headphones and closed my eyes. I didn't notice when Ruby got back in the car. Her cool fingertips touched my ear. I opened my eyes. Ruby had taken my headphones. "Your phone was ringing for a while," I explained instinctively. "Oh?" Ruby said, her eyes downcast, her long fingers twirling the headphones. Something was off about her mood. I didn't know what to say. The car fell silent. Ruby pulled out her cigarette case, shook one out, and put it to her lips. She opened the window and turned to the side to light it. "I remember when we were kids. I used to go to your house all the time for noodles." I gave her a quick glance. Strange. The great Ruby Brown actually remembered a bowl of noodles. I thought of my father and answered quietly, "Yeah, you could eat 3 bowls in one sitting." Ruby raised an eyebrow in disgust. "Unlike you, picky eater. 2 strands of noodles and you were full." I pressed my lips together, unable to argue. Back then, my dad's cooking skills were seriously lacking. The only thing he could make well was a simple bowl of scallion oil noodles. I had eaten it my whole life and was sick of it. Every time I came to the table, I prayed it wouldn't be noodles. But of course, after Ruby tried it once, she praised my dad to the skies. My dad was overjoyed and enthusiastically invited her over for dinner all the time. Ruby wasn't shy. She came over every other day, and scallion oil noodles became a staple in our house. I felt like my life was over. I couldn't eat another bite. Ruby's long arm reached out the window, tapping the ash from her cigarette. Her voice was tinged with a faint regret. "I guess I won't be able to have it anymore." The sadness of my father's death washed over me. I looked out the window, speechless. It had been a long time since Ruby and I had shared such a relaxed, warm moment. Perhaps because she had missed my father's funeral, she had temporarily reined in her usual flippancy. The phone on the center console rang. shattering the rare moment of peace. Ruby sat back in the driver's seat, held the phone to her ear, and turned the steering wheel with one hand. Just as the car started moving, a bright male voice came through the speaker. He was angry, his accusation bold and direct. "Ruby, where the hell have you been?" Ruby's phone was connected to the car's Bluetooth. She had forgotten to switch the audio output. It was Ethan. I knew it. She made no effort to hide it from me. "Where are you?" she asked lazily. He named a hotel, and his tone shifted to a pout. "I flew for over 10 hours.
I'm exhausted.
Oh, so Ethan was back in the country. I put my headphones back on and turned the volume all the way up. The call ended quickly. Ruby glanced at me in the rearview mirror, her lips moving slightly. I could read her lips. She was asking, "Home?" "Yeah," I said, closing my eyes. Ruby stepped on the gas and the car shot forward. I was caught off guard, my body lurching forward. I opened my eyes in a panic. The rearview mirror reflected Ruby's wild face. She was focused on the road ahead, the corners of her lips turned up in a distinctly wicked smile. She dropped me off at the door, then spun the car around and disappeared down the road. I stood there for a moment before turning to go inside. These past few days, I had quietly seen my father off. But in the silence of the night, grief seeped in like 1,000 tiny threads, finding its way into every crack. Before, even though my father was sick and living in the care facility, I still had somewhere to go. Now I looked around and couldn't find a home anywhere. This house was extravagant and empty, nothing more than a gilded cage. My body clock, honed over many years, woke me at 6 on the dot. I must have cried in my sleep, because there were dried tear tracks on my face. I lay there, clearing my mind, gathering my emotions, then got up. I saw a figure by the window and paused on my way downstairs. The spring night was long. The faint morning light was sliced into fragments by the trees outside, casting shifting shadows on her. She had just woken up and was still in her pajamas. "Your expression," Ruby turned her head, "is very interesting." I walked to the counter, poured a glass of warm water, and said frankly, "I didn't think you were coming back last night." I was a little surprised to see her. Didn't she need to stay at the hotel and keep someone company? Ruby's lips curved playfully. "What, were you planning to catch me in the act, Mr. Wilson?" I had just taken a sip of water and nearly choked. In the past, as long as Ruby didn't cross a line, I wouldn't interfere. But she had a knack for causing trouble, and she did it loudly, her scandals plastered across the tabloids one after another. And just as she wanted, Mr. Wilson, had become a joke. She was the one being reckless, but the Brown family always held me accountable. I knew she hated it when I showed up at clubs and parties to drag her home. But what could I do? As long as I was Mr. Wilson, I had to clean up her messes. That wasn't the plan. I swallowed the bitter taste in my mouth with the water. "Just be discreet," I reminded her. "Don't get caught." Ruby squinted through the rising smoke. "Sorry, I was born to be high profile." There was nothing more to say. After finishing my water, I went for my morning run as usual. When I was done, showered, and dressed, I ran into Ruby in the garage on her way to the office. She frowned slightly. "Julian Wilson, the company has bereavement leave." I know, I nodded. 15 days. It ends today. Ruby looked down at me. She suddenly leaned in, her hand on my shoulder, the back of her fingers brushing against my neck. A tickling sensation. I removed her hand. "We're going to be late." Ruby smirked. "The Brown family must have done something right in a past life to get a son-in-law like you." I ignored her sarcasm and got in my car. Not long after I pulled out, a blue sports car sped past. Ruby's elbow was propped on the window frame as she disappeared into the traffic. I gripped the steering wheel and frowned. Did she think the highway was a racetrack? After being out for over 2 weeks, I was buried in a mountain of paperwork as soon as I got to the office. My secretary peeked in. "Mr. Wilson, Ms. Brown wants to see you in her office." I had a feeling this wasn't going to be good. Even though I was prepared, my stomach still churned as I pushed open the door. Ruby was lounging in her chair. Sitting on the long desk in front of her was a man, his long, straight legs swinging casually. He was facing her, so I couldn't see his face. But from his stylish, bold attire, I had a pretty good guess it was Ethan Ito. I looked at Ruby. "Ms. Brown, you wanted to see me?" Ruby gestured towards me with her chin, raising an eyebrow. "Well, look who it is. My husband." The moment I heard that tone and that title, I felt a headache coming on. Here we go again. I never thought Ethan would actually make good on his threat and come find me here. Ethan turned around, his eyes brazenly scanning me from head to toe. "Well, if it isn't my brother-in-law." "We meet again," he said with a bright, confident smile, not a hint of awkwardness, as if he were sitting in front of his wife. I suddenly felt an urge to laugh. I used to see him and think, with a heavy heart, that Ruby treated him differently from other men. Now, seeing him again, I realized he wasn't so different from the rest of them after all. I guess my perspective had changed. "Hello," I replied politely. He smoothly swung his body around, propping his chin on his hands. "It's been less than 5 years, and you're already looking like a top executive." He winked slyly. "I hear you're the VP now." A subtle dig at me for riding Ruby's coattails. I smiled faintly. I pulled some strings. Ethan seemed taken aback by my frankness. Ruby let out a low chuckle. She leaned to one side, resting her cheek on her hand, and gave me an appreciative look. I lowered my eyes. "Ruby," Ethan whined, "I want to pull some strings and work at your company too." Ruby smirked. "You're not Mr. Wilson." That shut Ethan up. "Whose side are you on?" Ruby just laughed her careless laugh and didn't answer. "Ruby, that's enough. You work, you spend your nights at bars and your days sleeping." Ethan pouted. "I can just go home earlier at night. Why don't you just sleep at the bar?" "You're making fun of me." They bickered back and forth as if I wasn't even there. "Ms. Brown," I said coolly, "if that's all, I'll get back to work." Ruby shot me a meaningful glance. I turned to leave, but Ethan wouldn't let it go. "Hey, don't go yet." When I didn't stop, he jumped off the desk and chased after me. "Brother-in-law." His laughing voice followed me. I turned slightly. "Is there something else?" He wanted to cause trouble, and Ruby was letting him. She even summoned me here for him. Wasn't that enough? Not really. "I just wanted to let you know that Ruby and I were together in Africa." I thought to myself, that line sounds familiar. One day after I married Ruby, I got a text from an international number. It was short, but it took me a long time to process. The text itself was only one line. "I was the one with Ruby for her 4 years in London. Who the hell are you?" I read it over and over again. So much time has passed. It's hard to remember what I was thinking then. All I remember is the feeling of my heart being torn apart. I didn't reply then, but now I could face it calmly. Who was I? Her childhood sweetheart? Her husband by arrangement? I nodded coolly. "Yes, I know. You're that understanding brother-in-law?" "Well," he said knowingly, "it's a high society marriage, right? It's all about benefits. Who'd be stupid enough to have real feelings?" His implication was obvious. I was a tool for the marriage alliance, and he and Ruby were the real deal. In an age where the one who isn't loved is the third wheel is a celebrated love philosophy. I was here first, yet I had become the third person in someone else's relationship. Sigh. I'm the worst. I couldn't help but smile. "You're right." The smile on Ethan's face faltered. He was trying so hard to get a rise out of me, but it was like punching a pillow. It was frustrating for him. I ignored him and went back to my work. On Saturday morning, Ruby still hadn't come home. I sent her a text, 10 a.m. at the estate. Even if we couldn't stand side by side as a loving couple, we had to show up at the same time. As usual, Ruby didn't reply, but I knew she wouldn't miss it. I arrived on time. A few minutes later, Ruby's car came screeching up. In the passenger seat, Ethan was dressed elegantly, a far cry from his usual flashy style. As they drove past, he waved at me. "Good morning, brother-in-law." I hadn't expected Ruby to be so foolish as to bring him home, right in front of everyone. After Grandpa Brown passed away, the rest of the family couldn't control Ruby's antics, so they just turned a blind eye. But the Brown family prided themselves on their upstanding reputation. They would never allow a male other woman in their house. Ruby got out of the car and strode inside. I followed at a calm pace. Ethan chased after me with bags of gifts. Brother-in-law, can you help me? Do you think Ruby's family will like these gifts? I had no desire to talk to him and kept walking. Ethan persisted. I hear her parents don't like you very much. Do you think they'll like me? I paused. I looked him over from head to toe. Ethan waited for my answer with a grin. I gave a small, faint smile, said nothing, and started walking again. He seemed to take that as a challenge and hurried past me to get inside first. Mr. Brown was just coming down the stairs, draping a jacket over his arm. He saw Ethan and me enter one after the other, then glanced at Ruby, who was lounging on the sofa, playing with a teacup. He knew exactly what was going on. I lowered my eyes, playing the part of the uninvolved bystander. Ethan put on a handsome smile.
Uncle, I'm at an ITO.
It's a pleasure to meet you. This is a small gift for you. I hope. It is small, Mr. Brown cut him off coldly. Ethan's smile froze. This is a family dinner. We're not receiving guests, Mr. Brown said, then looked at the butler. Show him out. Yes, sir. The butler gestured towards the door. Mr. Ito, this way, please. Ethan was completely unprepared for this. He stood there, flustered and embarrassed, his face turning red and white. He looked at Ruby pleadingly. Ruby. Ruby sat with her legs spread casually, her eyes fixed on the teacup in her hand. She didn't even look up. I suddenly felt a little sorry for Ethan. For someone as wild as Ruby, her favor was like a flower in a mirror, the moon in the water. Enchanting, but not real. When Ethan left, there were tears of humiliation in his eyes. His presence didn't disrupt the dinner atmosphere in the slightest. Only Grandpa Brown raised his cane and lightly tapped Ruby's arm. You need to tone it down. Don't bring your unsavory friends here. It's upsetting. Ruby leaned back lazily, her voice innocent. You're blaming me for this? He wanted to come, and you couldn't stop him? That's right, Ruby said with a flippant raise of her eyebrows. I can't exactly get physical with a man, can I? Grandpa Brown couldn't win against her and just glared. Then he turned to me with a kind expression. Julian, come sit by Grandpa. Perhaps because Ruby had really gone too far this time, Grandpa Brown spent a long time comforting me. I listened with my head down, playing the part of the perfect grandson-in-law. After he was done with me, he turned to Ruby, his tone shifting. You need to settle down. You've been married for almost 5 years, and there's still no talk of children. Now hold on. Ruby's voice was flippant. It's not like I can have a baby all by myself just because I settle down. My brow furrowed. Just then, Ruby's gaze shifted to me, playful and challenging. Before Grandpa Brown could turn his attention to me, I quietly stood up. Grandpa, I need to use the restroom. I took my time before heading back to the living room. The thick carpet muffled my footsteps. Grandpa Brown was still talking to Ruby. Julian is a good kid. Stop messing with him. Ruby drew out her words mockingly. A good man deserves a good woman. It's a waste for him to be married to me. Good, you know it, the old man said bluntly. If you push him too far and his heart turns cold, you won't have a husband anymore. Ruby had heard enough. She reached for a cigarette case on the table and got up to go outside. I casually sat back down next to Grandpa Brown, pretending I hadn't heard a thing. We stayed until evening, when it was time for Grandpa Brown to rest. I had driven myself, so I left without waiting for Ruby. After driving for a while, I saw Ruby's car in my rearview mirror. This time, she didn't try to speed past me. She followed patiently all the way back to our house. There was no need to talk, so I went straight upstairs to wash up. As I came out of the bathroom, drying my hair, I was startled to see Ruby leaning against the wall. The room was dark, with only a sliver of light coming through the frosted glass of the bathroom door, casting a hazy glow on her. Her robe was slightly open, revealing her long neck and delicate collarbones, a subtle hint of sexiness. I said nothing. What's wrong with her? Just standing here listening to me shower. All done? Ruby raised an eyebrow, a familiar desire in her eyes. My hand tightened on the towel. Do you need something? At my words, Ruby's breath hitched, and she let out a low laugh. She reached out, her hand hooking around my neck, and leaned in, her eyes fixed on mine. What do you think? I looked away, silent. Ruby's fingers started to unbutton my shirt. You heard him today. Her warm breath tickled my shoulder and neck. She whispered with a wicked smile. Grandpa said he wants to hold his great-grandchild. Just as the deep-seated chill in my heart began to surface, I grabbed her hand. Ruby, that's enough. Ruby had used the marital duties excuse time and time again. Hearing my cold rejection for the first time, her aggressive movements stopped. She pulled back, staring at me intently. After a long moment, she scoffed. Julian Wilson, can't keep up the act anymore? I pressed my lips together and answered honestly. No, I don't want to pretend anymore. Her eyes narrowed, the smile disappearing, replaced by an icy coldness. A silent standoff. Just as the pent-up emotions were about to explode, Ruby spun around and slammed the door behind her. Water droplets from my wet hair fell onto the back of my hand. Downstairs, the roar of a sports car engine echoed through the night. Ruby was gone. I turned and walked onto the balcony. This 3-story villa was a generous wedding gift from Grandpa Brown. It was in the best location, right by the river with a perfect view from the balcony. I stood there quietly, just as I had for the past 1,800 nights. I let the spring night breeze dry my hair. The riverside road was long and quiet, the dim lights stretching into the distance. The sports car became a blur of light in the night, speeding away. A phrase popped into my head. Buzzkill. I knew Ruby. When she was upset, she had to find a way to let off steam, like at our wedding when she ditched me to go race cars. I don't know what got into her, but she drove like she had a death wish. She scared her friends so much they called her mother in a panic. Her mother had to go get her personally. Grandpa Brown was still alive then, and he did not spoil Ruby. He hit her especially hard that time. No one in the family dared to intervene. But Ruby was stubborn. She knelt on the floor, her back straight, without making a sound. She refused to back down. In the end, I was the one who hugged her, shielding her from Grandpa Brown's cane with my body. He couldn't stop in time, and it hit my shoulder. I grunted in pain and met Ruby's dark, fierce gaze. Julian Wilson, get the hell away from me, she said. The roar of the car engine faded as it looped back. Ruby had let off her steam and calmed down. The car pulled over on the riverside road. I squinted. I could faintly see a figure standing next to the car. The night outlined her slender form. In the quiet darkness, she lit a cigarette. The flame flickered and died, leaving only a glowing red ember between her fingers. For countless quiet nights, I had watched her leave, my heart filled with a storm of emotions. Now, looking at her, my heart was empty, completely still. Even the resentment I had felt towards her after my father's death was gone. Finally, there was nothing left. March 28th. A good day for a wedding. It was mine and Ruby's anniversary. In high society, anniversaries had become a glamorous social performance. In previous years, the Brown family would throw a lavish party. Ruby and I would play the part of a loving couple, creating fairy tale moments for the media's cameras. Everyone knew that the Brown family heiress's marriage was held up by the PR department of Brown Corp. Our happiness was a carefully crafted illusion. The public would gossip about Ruby's latest affair one day and be force-fed photos of our happy marriage the next. It must have been hard to swallow. With our 5th anniversary just a few days away, the planning team from Brown Corp called me. Mr. Wilson. A man's formal voice came through the phone. The arrangements for you and Ms. Brown's 5th anniversary are complete, as per instructions. The itinerary has been sent to your email. I listened without saying anything. The gift you've chosen for Ms. Brown will be delivered to you on the day. I finally understood what Ruby meant. This marriage, from beginning to end, was a play, and she and I were the lead actors. I smiled. That won't be necessary. I'll be choosing the gift myself this year. Well, he hesitated, but eventually agreed. Just before we hung up, he added, you and Ms. Brown are so in sync. She also said she wanted to choose her own gift this year. You two must be on the same wavelength. I smiled silently to myself. It was almost funny. Ruby had always been especially cooperative when it came to our anniversary events. Under the flash of the cameras, she would make intimate gestures, a far cry from the wild girl in the tabloids, her eyes filled with warmth and affection. But when we hugged, her lips would brush against my neck, deliberately provocative. Her voice, low and full of mockery, would say, "Not a bad performance, Mr. Wilson." I would maintain my smile, the love in my eyes a convincing lie for the cameras. "And how do you know I'm acting?" Ruby would pull me closer, her embrace tightening, forcing me against her chest. "The sound of your heart breaking is much clearer than the look in your eyes." My whole body would tense, and Ruby would squeeze harder. The cameras flashed relentlessly as we, two trapped animals, tore at each other in the dark. There was one name we could never escape: Luna Brown. The party was at 8. Aaron, following instructions, arrived at our house with a team of stylists. The son-in-law of the Brown family had to look the part. I had no choice in the matter. When I went downstairs, Ruby was already waiting. She looked up at the sound of my footsteps, her eyes lingering on me, but she didn't speak. We hadn't seen each other since that night. We would occasionally pass each other at the office. I would greet her politely, and she would respond with a cool indifference. We maintained a strange, unspoken peace. "Let's go," I said calmly, getting into the car. No one spoke. Silence filled the car. When we got out, Ruby naturally took my arm. She seemed surprised by my composure and glanced at me. I looked at the entrance to the party and put on my most practiced smile. The main characters have to make their entrance together, arm in arm. Ruby suddenly squeezed my hand, lacing our fingers together. She tightened her grip, pressing our palms together. I slowly looked up and met her dark, intense gaze. "Ruby, everyone's waiting for us." For our 5th anniversary, the Brown family had thrown an even grander party than usual. Ruby and I mingled with the guests, perfectly composed, impeccably polite. The cake was rolled out, and the performance reached its climax. Unlike previous years, Ruby didn't give me the designer jewelry or luxury watches the team had prepared. Those things weren't new, but their hefty price tags and dazzling sparkle were enough to capture everyone's attention. This year, Ruby's gift was a simple violin. I could tell at a glance that it was no ordinary instrument. It had been beautifully preserved through years of history, a treasure sought after by connoisseurs. It must have taken her a lot of effort to find it. So, she still remembered my childhood dream. I ran my fingers over the strings. I haven't touched a violin in a long time. I'm afraid I'd be wasting such a treasure. Ruby looked at me meaningfully, her voice low. "It's not too late." It is too late, I thought, but my expression didn't change. I took a gift box from a staff member and handed it to her. This year's gift I chose myself. Not just the gift, but the box too. I had even tied a big red bow on it. Very festive. Ruby looked down at it for a few seconds, as if she sensed something, and started to open it right there. I leaned in and wrapped my arms around her neck. Just like every anniversary before, we hugged, we smiled, we whispered in each other's ears. "I suggest you don't open that now." Ruby's body stiffened. My breath tickled her ear. "Ms. Brown, I'm done playing this game." The moment I said it, the long accumulated gloom and weight in my heart seemed to lift. In that instant, I was no longer the eldest son of the Wilson family, no longer the son-in-law of the Brown family, no longer Ruby's husband. I was just Julian Wilson. Ruby's other hand, hanging by her side, suddenly clenched around my waist. I smiled, relieved. "Ruby Brown, I can finally let you go." The party was still going, but Ruby was nowhere to be found. The lead actors' parts were over. I made my exit gracefully. I like to think I was a man who saw things through to the end. We got married on this day, so we would get divorced on this day too. 5 years. Exactly. Not a day more, not a day less. Aaron was driving, constantly glancing at the rearview mirror. Ms. Brown's car is right behind us. I didn't even have the desire to look back. Ignore her. There's a lot of traffic right now. If she keeps chasing us like this, I'm worried, Aaron said, concerned. Let her be. I had just stepped inside when I heard the roar of a sports car. accompanied by the sharp screech of tires on pavement, tearing through the night. Ruby grabbed my wrist from behind. Her grip was tight, crushing the bones. I didn't struggle. I just endured it. Her voice had lost its usual carelessness. It was terrifyingly calm. Is it real? This was the calm before a violent storm. Are you asking about what I said? Or the divorce papers? I said, my back still to her, answering my own question. They're both real. The grip on my wrist slowly loosened. Ruby pulled her hand back. A suffocating silence filled the air. A few minutes later, Ruby let out a cold scoff, her tone relaxed but icy. Julian Wilson, what right do you have to ask for a divorce? I turned my head to look at her, but said nothing. If she said I had no right, then I had no right. The lights were off. Only a thin, cold moonlight filtered through the side window. Ruby stood there, shattering the moonlight on the floor with her presence. She was furious, but her eyes still held a hint of her usual mocking carelessness. Julian Wilson, you married me because you had to, because you needed to atone for your sins. It was never about me, was it? All these years, you've paved the way for the Wilson family, paid off their debts, and served the Brown family like a slave to atone for your guilt. You've been so obedient, never fighting back. And now that the debts are paid, the sins atoned for, you think you can just kick me to the curb? She let out a low laugh, as if she'd heard the funniest joke. I blinked. I felt like laughing too. Ruby's smile vanished. She looked down at the divorce papers she was still clutching and slowly tore them into pieces. She didn't seem to be using much force, but her knuckles were white. I let her tear them. I didn't try to stop her. My silence seemed to infuriate her even more. Ruby suddenly threw her hand up, and the shreds of paper rained down on me, their sharp edges grazing my face, a faint stinging sensation. I stood perfectly still, accepting her rage. A chilling smile spread across Ruby's lips. Julian Wilson, don't even think about it. Ruby's anger finally erupted as she left. She kicked the door open with a loud bang and stormed out. Aaron stood outside, trembling, clutching the violin. Come in, I said, brushing the paper scraps off my clothes. Ms. Brown, Aaron had never seen her like this. He was terrified. It's okay. She won't be back, I reassured him, gesturing to the bar. Help yourself to a drink. I'm going to pack. Wait for me here. Okay. I took the violin from him and went upstairs. I packed up everything I was taking with me. As I picked up the photo album my father had left, a picture fell out. I picked it up and stared at it, a little dazed. The photo was from when I was 5. I was wearing a handsome little suit. My eyes curved into crescents when I smiled. On either side of me were 2 little girls. They looked identical, like they were cast from the same mold, but their auras were completely different. One was gentle and reserved, smiling quietly at the camera. The other was cool and defiant, looking reluctant to be there. One was Luna Brown, the other was Ruby Brown. I looked at the photo for a long time. Thinking about what Ruby had said, I suddenly saw the cruel hand of fate. As far back as I can remember, Ruby has disliked me. My grandfather and Grandpa Brown were comrades in arms. I heard that if it weren't for my grandfather, Grandpa Brown would have died on the battlefield. So the friendship between the Wilson and Brown families was rock solid. When we were kids, Grandpa Brown and my grandfather decided to arrange a marriage between us. Luna and Ruby were twins, and they couldn't decide. Grandpa Brown teased me, Julian, which sister do you like? Pick one and Grandpa will give her to you. I was confused, looking at the 2 identical little girls. After a long pause, I planted a kiss on Ruby's cheek. Her face turned red all the way to her ears. She furiously wiped the spot I had kissed. You little pervert. I was hurt. I pointed at her face. Sister, does it still hurt? Yes, I had kissed her because she had a scratch on her cheek. Whenever I got hurt, the adults would kiss my boo-boos. They said it would make the pain go away. I was just copying them. Ruby was not grateful. None of your business. Then she warned me fiercely, don't call me sister. I ran crying into my mother's arms, while the adults laughed heartily. And just like that, the engagement was set. They said we were like a pair of bickering little lovers. An old saying goes, lovers are destined to quarrel. They said we were a perfect match. As it turned out, they were only half right. Ruby and I were destined to quarrel, but we were not a perfect match. Ruby was the king of the kids, leading a gang of them on all sorts of mischief. She always teased me. She would roll around in the mud, then throw mud balls at my little suit. I would be on the verge of tears, and she would laugh hysterically. The little rascal was so dirty you could hardly tell what she looked like, and when she grinned, you could see her gappy teeth. Luna was completely different. She was afraid I would cry, so she would comfort me softly and take me home to change. In kindergarten, my pockets were always full of candy. I would share it with Luna, and she would beam. When I offered it to Ruby, she would snort, "I don't want your stupid candy." In elementary school, I lazily copied Luna's homework. Ruby mercilessly told the teacher on me. I was punished by having to stand in the corner. When she walked past, she would gloat, "Serves you right." In middle school, I stood by the track and yelled, "Go Luna, go!" On a scorching summer day, Ruby ran over from the track, drenched in sweat. She glared at me. "Julian Wilson, shut up. You're so annoying." I was so scared that the "Go, Ruby, go" I was about to yell got stuck in my throat. In high school, teenage hormones were raging. A boy asked me to give Ruby a love letter. I was conflicted. I don't know when it started, but I realized I got very unhappy when someone gave Ruby a love letter. Besides, ever since we were little, the adults had told me that I was going to marry Ruby when I grew up. So, I selfishly believed that Ruby couldn't accept love letters from anyone else. Seeing my dilemma, Luna kindly helped me refuse. Ruby and Julian are engaged. It wouldn't be appropriate. From then on, the news that Ruby Brown belonged to Julian Wilson spread throughout the school. Ruby was furious. She ran a hand through her hair in frustration. "Julian Wilson, you've really done it now." After that day, whenever someone gave me a love letter, Ruby would retaliate by throwing it in the trash in front of them. No one dared to give me a love letter again. In her words, "If I can't have any suitors, neither can you." After that, Ruby seemed to dislike me even more. I was really depressed for a while. I asked Luna, "Does Ruby not like me?" Luna smiled gently. "Why do you ask? If she doesn't like me, I won't marry her." I learned early on that marrying someone who doesn't love you turns a marriage into a tomb. The other person has their own world, while you're trapped, a complete tragedy for the rest of your life. Like my parents. Luna was silent for a long time, then asked, "Do you really like Ruby?" I nodded. "What do you like about her?" I couldn't answer. Young love is often so irrational. If the gentle, refined Luna was a soft spring rain, then the wild, unrestrained Ruby was a free, passionate wind blowing across the plains. I wanted to be on those plains, chasing that wind. When I didn't answer, Luna lowered her eyes. "Julian, she likes you too." She paused, then smiled. "She's just a big kid." Huh? I looked at her, confused. If she likes me, why does she always mess with me? I couldn't understand a girl's way of showing affection. Luna's gaze fell on the open book in front of her. Everyone shows they like someone in different ways. I had always trusted Luna completely. My teenage heart started to flutter. One night, during a party at the Browns, I snuck away from the adults and knocked on Ruby's window. She hated parties and listening to the adults drone on. When she opened the window that day, she was in the middle of an intense game. She didn't even look up. "Don't bother me." "Ruby, do you like me?" Ruby's hand jerked dramatically. Her phone fell to the floor, and game over flashed on the screen.
Ich grinste her.
"Why are you blushing? Just answer me." Ruby got annoyed. She stuck her chin out and snorted. "Only a dog would like you." Slam. She shut the window. My heart was broken. I hid under the covers, my eyes red, feeling miserable. Young love and hate are always so dramatic. I was mad at Ruby for the whole summer. When our college entrance exam scores came out, Luna got into a top university. My scores were average, but with the extra points from my violin awards, I could get into a good school. As for Ruby, she got a beating from Grandpa Brown. To reward Luna, Grandpa Brown arranged for a car to take our group of friends to a resort villa in the mountains. Without any supervision, we all went wild. I had my first drink. It was disgusting. I grimaced, my eyes watering. Ruby raised an eyebrow. That's all you've got? And you're trying to drink? None of your business. I wouldn't want to bother. Arguing with Ruby just made me feel worse. I drank a lot more out of spite. Unsurprisingly, I got completely wasted and passed out amidst the blaring music and our friends' chaotic dancing. When the earthquake hit, I thought I was just dizzy. It all happened so fast. The ground shook, and the sound of concrete and steel breaking was deafening. Screams filled the air. It was chaos. When Luna threw herself on top of me, I didn't even have time to react. I just saw the ceiling beam collapse, crashing down on her thin shoulders. I don't know how long I was out. When I woke up, it was pitch black. My whole body ached, but I couldn't tell where the pain was coming from. I tried to move, but I was pinned down, not by concrete and steel, but by a girl's slightly warm body. Luna. I couldn't move. Tears streamed down my face. For the first time, I felt the overwhelming presence of death. A warm, sticky liquid trickled onto my neck. Luna's breathing was shallow, just above my head. Julian, don't cry. Luna's voice was weak. You're bleeding so much. I cried even harder, afraid she was going to die. I could feel how much pain she was in. Her body was trembling uncontrollably, but she still managed to smile and comfort me. Don't be afraid. Ruby will come save us. She said that Ruby was the only one who wasn't in the villa when the earthquake hit. She would definitely come for us. Ruby became our only glimmer of hope in the darkness. We held on to that hope, fighting against death in the darkness. Luna said we couldn't fall asleep, so we talked and talked. Later, I couldn't remember what we said. I only remember Luna's voice getting weaker and weaker, like a whisper. You have to be good with Ruby from now on. I won't be here to pass messages for you anymore.
Julian, I'm sorry.
If only you had chosen me. Luna didn't make it until Ruby arrived with help. Of the people buried that day, more than half survived. Luna was not one of them. The rescue was still ongoing. Everything was chaotic. I was drifting in and out of consciousness, unable to even feel pain. I could faintly hear people talking. Ruby's cries were especially long and heartbreaking. A teenager's grief is like a tsunami. I think Ruby cried all her tears that day. For years after, she was wild and defiant, and never shed another tear. I was in a coma in the hospital for a long time and missed Luna's funeral. Ruby never came to visit me. After I was discharged, I heard that Ruby had gone abroad. Grandpa Brown told me that before she left. She had knelt at home for a long time. She insisted I should have been the one to die that day. I never found out why Ruby left so suddenly that night, or what Luna meant by I'm sorry. In that 1 year, the three of us, who thought we would never be separated, were swept away by the wheels of fate. Luna would forever be 18. Ruby left for a foreign country, not setting foot on her home soil for 4 years. I was consumed by guilt and willingly accepted the shackles of fate, embracing the collapse of my life. There was no right or wrong, only a long, arduous journey of atonement. I felt a tear drop and wiped the blurred spot on the photo over and over. I put the picture back in the album and carefully packed it in my suitcase. It felt like my entire 27 years of life had been reduced to a thick photo album. Really, nothing was left. The gifts Ruby had given me over the years. They sat in a glass cabinet in the closet, sparkling and priceless. The heiress throwing money around to make her lover smile was a common sight, but there was never much sincerity in it. I leaned the violin against the cabinet. Looking at it, only this felt like it had a sliver of sincerity. The only things I took from the house were my own clothes. As the car pulled away, Aaron said cautiously, "I think Ms. Brown is back." I glanced in the rearview mirror. Ruby had returned. Her car screeched to a halt at the gate, and she rushed inside. I looked away. Let's go. The next day, Ruby's father called. He was brief. Come home and see me. Now. He hung up abruptly. I held the phone and sighed softly. The Brown estate. The servants had all been sent away. The house was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I walked towards the second floor study. In the hallway, I saw Ruby standing by the window at the far end. She was still wearing last night's clothes. The bloodstains on her white shirt were jarring. Her hands were wrapped in gauze, blood seeping through. Even in such a state, she didn't look defeated. A wisp of smoke curled up from her fingers, her beautiful face a mask of cold indifference after a storm. She glanced at me when she heard my footsteps, then looked down, silent. I walked past her and pushed open the study door. All the Brown family elders were there. The conversation stopped the moment I entered. I greeted each of them politely. With Grandpa Brown there, things didn't get too ugly. He beckoned me over. "Julian, come tell Grandpa why you suddenly want a divorce." "Grandpa, it's not sudden." I poured him some warm tea, as I always did, my voice gentle but firm. "You know I wouldn't bring this up lightly. Tea doesn't cool down in an instant, and neither does a person's heart." The old man knew this, but he still asked, "Are you sure about this?" "Yes." Worried he was concerned about the division of assets, I added, "Don't worry, I don't want anything." "Sai, it's not about the money." He waved his hand. "Ruby has been a bit wild these years, but you two are childhood sweethearts, and you've been married for so long. I thought you'd fight and make up, but I never expected." I found it a little amusing. Ruby was promiscuous, but with her status as the Brown family heiress and her unparalleled business acumen, her romantic escapades seemed insignificant. Everyone was tolerant of her. She was spoiled. Ruby and I were never equals. I wasn't allowed to have emotions, to have personal feelings. If I did, I was in the wrong. Seeing my silence, he played the emotional card. "I've watched you grow up. In the years you've been part of our family, you've been filial, steady, and proper in everything you do. Grandpa is truly reluctant to let you go." I looked down, my fingertips tracing circles on my palm. The person they never seemed to cherish before was suddenly precious now that it was time to leave. "Grandpa, take care of yourself." That was all I had to say. I bowed deeply to everyone and turned to leave. Just then, the door was thrown open, and Ruby walked in, her face cold. She didn't look at me, but as we passed each other, she grabbed my wrist tightly. She squeezed, seemingly oblivious to the pain, her grip relentless. I looked down at her hand. More blood was seeping through the gauze. Her words were for everyone else, but they hit me like a hammer. "Don't waste your breath. I'm not getting a divorce." Everyone was stunned by her intensity. The room was silent. Ruby's lips twisted into a semblance of a smile, but her words were chilling. "Unless I'm dead." By the end of the day, Ruby's mother was livid. She grabbed Grandpa Brown's cane and started hitting Ruby with it. Hard. The sound of the cane hitting flesh and bone was dull and heavy. "You're the one who wants to die, and now you're the one who's making a scene about life and death. How did I give birth to such a monster?" I suddenly remembered our wedding day. It was a similar scene. The difference was, this time I didn't rush over to protect her. And Ruby, she turned her body slightly, as if to shield me. She bit her lip, not making a sound, not uttering a single word of surrender. I thought, Ruby is still as stubborn as ever. She hasn't changed a bit. Finally, Mr. Brown couldn't take it anymore and held his wife back, pleading. Mrs. Brown was furious. "Spoiling a child is like killing them. Go on, keep spoiling her." Ruby pulled me away from the drama. At the door, I pulled my hand away. It was stained with her blood. I wanted to say something, but I decided against it. We were silent. Ruby raised her hand to light a cigarette, but her hand was shaking so much from the pain that she couldn't get it lit. I couldn't watch anymore. I took the lighter from her and lit the cigarette for her. The flame touched the tip, but Ruby didn't move. She just held the cigarette loosely between her lips and stared at me. Finally, she exhaled and crushed the cigarette under her foot, her smile mocking. "Julian Wilson, you really don't care about me at all, do you?" I frowned. This woman was something else, blaming me. There was too much to say, and most of it was pointless. I didn't want to argue, so I stayed silent. When I didn't respond, she seemed to deflate, her expression becoming more weary. She asked, out of the blue, have you moved most of your things? I nodded. I've taken everything I need. Ruby fell silent again. I couldn't figure out what she was thinking. I knew she didn't care about money, but I still said, I only took my personal belongings. Nothing else. At that, Ruby laughed, a playful, sarcastic sound. Is that what you think of me? Not at all, I answered honestly. I just wanted to make a clean break. Ruby seemed to understand. Her smile faded. You didn't take anything. She turned her head away, a faint smile on her lips, self-deprecating and lonely. But I feel like I have nothing left. I chose a nice day and bought some flowers to go to the cemetery, to see my father and to see Luna. My father's new grave had already weathered a few storms, and moss was starting to grow on the tombstone. I thought about how, no matter how much love there is between people, it all eventually turns into a solitary grave. Some are outside the grave, some are inside. And so it goes until everyone disappears from the world. Love and hate are wiped clean. No need for grudges, no need for obsession. After standing there for a long time, I took the flowers and walked across the cemetery to see Luna. Her grave was refurbished every year. It had been 9 years, but there were still no signs of age. But the girl in the photo was forever 18. I had come here countless times and told her so many things. The girl in the photo smiled gently, as if she were really listening, but she could no longer solve my problems or comfort my sorrow. I often wondered, if Luna were still alive, what kind of life would she have had? She would have been covered in glory, loved by her husband, surrounded by children and grandchildren, a life of fulfillment. Such a gentle, beautiful person deserved that. But the most incomprehensible thing in this world is fate. That day, Ruby asked me, why didn't you fight back? What was there to fight back with? My guilt was overwhelming. My pain was endless. Luna, I'm moving on. Will you be mad at me? I whispered. The wind blew, and the girl in the photo was silent. This was a long goodbye. I stood up and brushed off the dust. Luna, I'm leaving. I probably won't be back. We all have to walk our own path eventually. As I was leaving, I thought of Ruby and added, I'm sorry. I couldn't keep my promise to you to have a good life with Ruby. The kindness was great, but the fate was shallow. The torrent of fate swept us apart. We each boarded a ship with no destination, never to dock at the same time again. I stood there for a long time, then turned to leave. When I turned around, Mr. Brown was standing right behind me. I froze. He was carrying pastries. He walked to Luna's grave and placed them down one by one. I knew I'd find you here, he said to me, his voice calm and unreadable. I nodded silently. Mr. Brown didn't speak again. He took out a handkerchief and wiped Luna's photo, even though I had already cleaned it. After a while, he finally said, should I call you foolish or conscientious? I looked up. Mr. Brown was gently stroking Luna's picture. My Luna was such a good child. She would never want anyone to feel guilty because of her kindness. My heart skipped a beat. So he knew everything. I don't like you, but it's not because of Luna. He stood up straight, slowly folding the handkerchief. That child, Ruby, has been wild since she was little. She never really opened up to us. I thought she was forced to marry you, that she was unhappy, and that's why she was so reckless. As a father, I don't want my child to have an unhappy marriage, so I was harsh with you. I know, I said sincerely. I've never blamed you. He started walking down the mountain, and I followed quietly. I didn't understand my own daughter. It's not that she doesn't like you, it's that she likes you too much, Mr. Brown said, a hint of guilt in his voice. I remembered things from when we were young. It seemed like everyone preferred the more accomplished child, even in a family like the Browns. Luna and Ruby were twins, and their parents' love had to be divided. And where there is love, there is favoritism. Luna's brilliance captured the family's attention. Ruby was wild and unruly, and no one found her particularly likable, so she was often overlooked. And Ruby, with her rebellious nature, became even more difficult to manage. After Luna died, Ruby seemed to turn a new leaf, taking on all the family's expectations. Except for her romantic life, she was flawless. Grandpa Brown once said that Ruby thought she should have been the one to die that day. She must have felt an immense amount of guilt towards Luna. Mr. Brown sighed. The time I hit you, she was so angry she ran off to Africa to shoot deer to vent. That's when I realized how foolish that child is. I thought of the pictures of her and Ethan. It was hard to tell what was real anymore. It all seemed like an impossible knot. Mr. Brown seemed to read my mind. She wants you to let go of that baseless guilt more than anyone. She probably thinks you're in love with Luna, so she chose the stupidest way to act out. He couldn't help but sigh. On one hand, she's pushing you to fight back and free yourself. On the other, she's like a child throwing a tantrum because she can't get candy, just trying to get you to look at her. And in the end, at this point, this proud, powerful man's voice became pleading. Julian, as an elder, I know what's done is done. He paused. But as a father, I hope you can part with her on good terms. That child is stubborn. Don't let her walk into a dead end. I could hear the catch in his voice, and my heart ached for him. After he left, I walked along the mountain path for a long, long time. I thought about many things, and I thought about Luna. Luna always used to say, Julian, Ruby is just a big kid. I think she was right. Ruby has always been like that, saying one thing and meaning another, awkward and proud. Too proud and too stubborn. I thought, if love is kind, then having loved should be too. When I went back to the house to find Ruby, she was sitting in my closet. She was fixing the things she had broken, one by one. I once heard someone say that the most helpless thing a person can do is smash things in a fit of rage, and then, in the quiet aftermath, piece them back together again. Ruby looked up at me, then looked down, continuing her work in silence. The gauze on her hands was stained with blood, but she didn't seem to feel the pain, lost in her task. I didn't say anything. I went downstairs and got the first aid kit. When I came back and sat in front of her, she flinched a little when I reached for her hand. See, still so proud. Even though I was prepared, my heart still clenched when I unwrapped the gauze. Doesn't it hurt? Ruby turned her face away. I thought you didn't care if I lived or died. I had to laugh. Ruby, you're being so unreasonable. She heard me laugh and turned back, her expression complicated. All these years, it feels like we've never really talked, I said, cleaning her wounds, my voice wistful. From childhood to marriage, we were always so close, yet so far apart, entangled but distant. It was our personalities, it was fate. We were like two crashed airplanes on a path to self-destruction. Ruby was silent, not denying it. I continued cleaning her wounds, my voice calm. Ruby, I married you because of our families, because of guilt, but also because of love. Ruby snatched her hand back, her reaction strong, clearly in disbelief. Don't move, I said, pulling her hand back, a small smile on my lips. Have you forgotten? That year in London, you were the one who told me not to be greedy. She said that, so I stayed silent. It was hard to confess my love, and it was heartbreaking and powerless. Ruby started to explain, then trailed off. I know, you don't mean what you say. I gently wiped the fresh blood from her wound. But back then, I was really hurt. Ruby never seemed to understand that her saying one thing and meaning another was one thing, but hurting others was another. Then why did you go back and tell your mother you weren't going to marry me? Ruby ground her teeth, still angry. You said it so easily. What was I supposed to think? I almost laughed out loud. Have you forgotten about Ethan Ito? She really had forgotten. She raised an eyebrow. I never took him seriously. He used to follow our racing crew around. I hadn't seen him since I came back. That time in Africa, I don't know why he knew I was there, and then, what happened next, she did on purpose. When I first met Ethan in London, I thought Ruby liked him. I was sad, thinking that if she really had someone she liked, it would be pointless for me to tie her down in a marriage. She wouldn't be happy, and I couldn't bear it. So, I told my mother I wanted to call off the engagement. I got a beating for it. Thinking back now, it's kind of funny. I actually laughed. First, I was really sad, but later I really didn't care anymore. The defiance in Ruby's eyes slowly faded. My movements were gentle, my voice soft, even with a hint of a smile. All these years, my love for you has been a process of subtraction. Every reckless thing you did, my love for you decreased by 1 point, until it reached 0. Ruby grabbed my hand tightly, her lips pale. Her throat was dry. She couldn't form a complete sentence. I gently pulled my hand away and continued to treat her wounds. No matter what your reasons were, they can't erase the hurt you caused me. For so long, she had been childishly, stubbornly tormenting me, hurting me. All those little things were enough to break a person's heart. It was only after countless nights of red-rimmed eyes and sleepless, heartbroken nights that I learned to let go. Ruby, you ask what love is. I don't know how to answer you. Should I start from when I was 17 and knocked on your window? Or the nearly 100 plane tickets to London over those 4 years because I couldn't bear to be without you? Or how about when you said you missed my dad's noodles, so I spent ages learning how to make them, then flew thousands of miles just to cook you a bowl? Or should I talk about all the times I went looking for you in clubs and bars? My eyes red from lack of sleep? There was too much. I didn't know where to begin. I never said I loved her, but I did a million things to show it. She just chose to ignore them all. Ruby turned her head away, not daring to look at me, but her fingertips were trembling. I smiled tolerantly. I know. You don't want to hear it because you already know. How could Ruby not have felt my love? She was just stubborn, convinced that I was only doing it for the status of being Mr. Wilson. All these years, she kept asking me if I was tired of acting. How could I prove to her that it wasn't an act? She seemed to have forgotten that even if I did nothing, Grandpa Brown would have made us get married. This marriage was his promise to my grandfather. Thinking about it now, maybe this marriage was a curse from the beginning. Ruby and I were tied together. No matter what the other person did, it was always questioned. Was it duty, or was it real? Maybe I was at fault too. All these years, the constraints of the Wilson family, my father's long illness, my guilt over Luna, it all wore me down. Ruby kept pushing and I started to rebel. Kind but distant. Ruby wouldn't look at me. She tilted her head back, the corners of her eyes red. Julian, believe me, I've never liked anyone else. We haven't been apart for over 20 years. We won't be in the future either. She was so sure of herself, relying on our childhood friendship, on what she thought was the prison of our arranged marriage, on my tolerance and kindness. She seemed to have forgotten that Julian Wilson was a person. His heart wasn't made of steel, could hurt. It had wanted to stop beating more than once. But I'm letting you go. I gently tied the last knot on the bandage. As I was about to get up, Ruby suddenly wrapped her arms around me, burying her head in my neck. Something cold and wet touched my skin. The voice in my ear was muffled and broken. No matter what I do, you're still going to leave, aren't you? I spoke softly to her. Ruby, I want to be Julian Wilson again. The world is so much bigger than what I saw yesterday. Why be trapped in the past? A prisoner of my own making. Ruby always wanted me to break free from the cage. She never expected that when the day finally came, I would let go of her too. She let her arms fall, her head still bowed, refusing to let me see her eyes. Okay, she said, her voice hoarse, her eyelashes trembling. You should have always been Julian Wilson. I knew. This time she wouldn't make a scene. On the first day of autumn, Ruby called. We met at City Hall. Ruby arrived late, just as they were about to close. I hadn't seen her in almost 3 months. She had changed subtly. Her eyebrows still had that same playful tilt, but her narrow eyes held a new, quiet depth. She smirked. You've lost weight. She had a sharp eye. I had only lost a few pounds, but she noticed with just a glance. They're about to close, I reminded her. In such a hurry? Yes. Ruby lowered her eyes and didn't say anything else. As the clerk was about to stamp our marriage certificate void, Ruby turned and half hid behind me. It was as if she was enveloping me in a hug, but without actually touching me. The scene was strangely familiar. I couldn't help but think of the day we got married. We had just graduated. It was Grandpa Brown who had taken us to get our license. Ruby was reluctant. As she got in the car, she warned me, Julian Wilson, think carefully. Don't regret this. I didn't say anything. I just nodded without hesitation. When we took our marriage photo, I was so nervous my palms were sweating, and my expression was stiff. We took it several times, but the photographer wasn't happy. So nervous? Just as the shutter clicked, she mischievously wrapped her arm around my waist. Smile, honey. I straightened up, my face instantly turning red. The photographer was pleased. There we go. That's what a groom should look like. That picture ended up on our marriage certificate. Ruby's eyebrow was raised in a teasing smile. I was leaning against her shoulder, looking shy, my eyes shining. To anyone looking, Ruby didn't seem forced at all. To anyone looking, we were a couple deeply in love. Now, as we got our divorce, Ruby recreated that moment. Her wicked smile tickled my ear. Honey, the stamp hasn't landed yet. I'm not wrong, am I? Ruby shrugged innocently. Thump. The stamp came down. Ruby sat up straight, took the red and green booklets, and stuffed them in her hand without a glance. Outside City Hall, Ruby invited me farewell dinner. I looked at my watch. I had time. My treat. All right. You treated me when we got married. I'll treat you when we get divorced. I led her through a small alley to a tiny noodle shop. Low, old wooden tables, red plastic stools. Have a seat. Ruby stood still. Are you this broke now? I reminded her, you brought me here the day we got our marriage license. I've always been one for seeing things through from beginning to end. Ruby scratched her eyebrow. I guess I did. The owner greeted us warmly. It's been a while since I've seen you two together. It's been a few years, I nodded. The day we got our marriage license. Ruby said, honey, shouldn't we celebrate with a meal? The word honey from her lazy tone was hard to read. She brought me here. The owner saw the red marriage certificate on the table and congratulated us. Ruby's expression was a little flat, but there was a hint of a smile in her eyes. When she paid, she gave extra. Her smile was faint. Consider it a wedding treat. You two have been married for a few years, right? Any kids? The owner asked, a little too enthusiastically. Ruby's lips curved playfully, but she didn't say anything. I answered truthfully, we just got divorced. Oh, the owner was shocked and stood there for a long moment. Not daring to ask any more questions, she changed the subject. The usual? Yes. After the owner left, Ruby asked, have you been here alone? No, I answered without thinking. The truth was I had, but I didn't want to admit how pathetic I had been in that marriage. When Ruby's scandals were all over town, I would wander aimlessly, and I would always think of our wedding day and somehow end up here. When I was sad, I would sit here, my head down, eating a bowl of steaming noodles. I would pretend the wetness in my eyes was from the steam. Liar. Ruby's long fingers tapped on the table. You came here a lot during our marriage. How did you know? Ruby gave a half smile but didn't answer. I didn't press her. Not every question has an answer, and not every question needs one. Ruby and I fell into the latter category. As we walked out of the little restaurant, through the narrow, winding alley, Ruby suddenly said, this place is going to be demolished soon. There was a hint of regret in her voice. I remembered that this place held more meaning for Ruby than it did for me. In high school, she brought me here for the first time. After 2 bowls of noodles, while the owner was busy, she left a stack of red bills on the table and walked out. Are you crazy? Why did you leave so much money for 2 bowls of noodles? I couldn't understand. Ruby covered my mouth and half dragged, half carried me away. I found out later that the owner had a child with ALS and was constantly in and out of the hospital. After that, we came here often, always leaving extra money and running off. Once, the owner chased us for several blocks with the money. I think I liked Ruby not just because I longed for freedom and wanted to chase that wild wind, but also because, under all her bravado, she was a soft-hearted miss. Don't tell me you're still hoping the owner will pay you back. I teased, trying to lighten the mood. Ruby glanced at me with disdain. Only you would think of that. We bickered all the way, bringing up each other's embarrassing childhood stories and laughing mercilessly. As we talked, Ruby teased, if I knew we'd get along so well after getting divorced, I would have dragged you here to do it a long time ago. I looked down at the stone path and smiled, but didn't reply. When we reached the end of the alley, Ruby took the wrapped violin out of her car. Afraid I would refuse, she gave me a flippant smile. I accepted your gift. You have no reason to refuse mine, right? She was right. Not just the divorce papers, she had even taken the divorce certificate. I reached out and took it. Thank you. Don't mention it. Ruby scratched her eyebrow. I remember when you were 15, you said you were going to take your violin and conquer the world, to stand on the biggest international stage. You remember that? I smiled. Young and full of ambition, not afraid of any challenge, determined to make my dreams shine as bright as the moon. Later, I realized that the world is littered with the fragments of broken dreams. Ruby lit a cigarette and looked at me. I remember everything you've ever said. I pretended not to understand. Ms. Brown has a great memory. Of course, Ruby said with a proud tilt of her eyebrow. For a moment, it was like we were teenagers again. Ruby stood with her arms crossed, a cigarette between her fingers, silent for a long time. I saw the faint scars on her left hand, and the wedding ring still on her long ring finger. Noticing my gaze, Ruby turned her hand over to look at it. Oh, the ring. I really didn't want to pay attention to it. But just that one glance, and she caught me. I didn't know what to say, so I just stayed quiet. Ruby held the cigarette between her teeth, her eyes focused. I promised to give you your freedom, but I never promised not to chase you again. I knew it was impossible, so I just smiled. You won't catch me. Ruby took a long drag from her cigarette, the white smoke curling into the night. She was arrogant and casual. Julian Wilson, as long as I'm standing, no one else has a chance. Yes, Ruby certainly had a right to be proud. Aaron's call came at just the right time. I turned to answer it, changing the subject. I'm here. His voice came through the phone at the same time I saw a car down the street flash its lights. I see you. I put my phone back in my bag and turned to Ruby. I have to go. The wisps of smoke blurred her features. She just nodded slightly. I wanted to say goodbye, but then I thought it didn't seem right. So, in my heart, I said, Ruby, take care. Aaron couldn't park for long, so I jogged over, holding the violin. As the car drove past, Ruby was still standing there. One cigarette had burned down, and she was lighting another. I looked away and slowly closed my eyes. That night, I boarded a plane to a faraway land. During the long flight, I suddenly felt an urge to open the violin case. To my surprise, there was something else inside besides the violin. A bank card and a good luck charm from a temple. There was no pin on the bank card. I could guess what it was, but I would probably never use it. I looked at the good luck charm. 4 characters were carved on it: peace and prosperity. On the back, there were 2 lines of small, engraved words: Julian Wilson, Ruby Brown. I looked at it for a while, then put it in my bag with the bank card. That night, thousands of feet in the air, I had a dream. In my dream, the familiar tree-lined path was still long and quiet. The setting sun filtered through the leaves, casting mottled shadows. At the end of the road was a sea of orange. A young Luna carried her backpack properly, while a young Ruby slung hers over her shoulder with a couldn't-care-less attitude. I ran after them, shouting, "Wait for me." Luna turned around and smiled gently. "Julian, slow down. I'll wait for you." Ruby didn't even turn her head. When I caught up to her, she frowned in disgust. "Why are you running so fast? In a hurry to die?" I complained to Luna. "Luna, she's bullying me again. Don't mind the big kid." I stuck my tongue out at Ruby triumphantly. Ruby's frown deepened. "Julian Wilson, you're an idiot." She grabbed my shirt, and I took off running. She chased after me relentlessly. Luna was far behind, watching us and laughing. So, even a childhood friendship couldn't blossom into a perfect ending. It's a long, long way from here. We will never meet again. So, Ruby Brown, don't frown. Don't worry. Everything will pass. Epilogue. Ruby knew. That day at the alley, it was the last time she would see Julian Wilson. He wasn't coming back. Ruby left her car and walked alone down the long, dark street. She thought about many things. When she was very young, an adult pointed to a handsome little boy and teased her. "That's your future husband." Ever since she was a child, her name and Julian Wilson's were tied together, a destiny set long ago. She had also known for a long time that she liked Julian Wilson. It was a love that was approved by everyone, open and honest, blessed. Childhood sweethearts, innocent and pure, a happy ending. That was the life she wanted to give Julian Wilson. But how did it end up like this? Ruby thought maybe it was that trip after the college entrance exams, when Julian was drunk and Luna gently kissed his cheek. Or maybe it was after Luna died, when she was going through her things and found Luna's diary, filled with her unspoken love. Ruby would regret for the rest of her life that she left in a huff that night. If she hadn't left, she would have been the one buried in the rubble with Julian. She would have been the one to die, not Luna. And Julian wouldn't have had to live with the guilt of Luna's death. Ruby thought Julian's guilt was probably mixed with love, which made it so heavy. When she was young, Ruby would sometimes overhear the adults talking. They would say Julian and Luna's personalities seem more compatible. They would sigh, yes, if only Julian had chosen Luna back then. A wound grew in Ruby's heart and scarred over. She thought the living can never win against the dead, especially when that person was her sister. Ruby had always been obsessed. Her Julian Wilson should have been that handsome, slightly arrogant boy who smiled so brightly, the genius violinist who shone on stage with his instrument. She wanted so badly to help him escape the cage of fate, but she didn't know how. So, Ruby childishly chose the most direct, superficial method. She pretended to be promiscuous, a clumsy act to test him, to push him, to test if he really had any feelings for her, to push him to break free from the shackles of fate, to let go of his thoughts of Luna and his guilt. The one in the middle of it is lost, and the onlookers dare not speak. She walked further and further down this ridiculous path, and it seemed to have worked. Julian was finally free, and he had finally let her go. The night was deep. Ruby felt her eyes sting. A gust of wind, and tears threatened to fall. She walked for a long, long time, as if she were walking through her entire life. She knew Julian wasn't coming back, and she couldn't find him anymore. Ruby finally remembered. During those 4 years in London, Julian came to visit her once. The boy who had never done anything out of line put on a cool leather jacket and got on her motorcycle. She deliberately scared him. "You sure about this? If you fall and die, you won't be so handsome anymore." He was terrified of being ugly. But that day, the boy stubbornly held onto her waist. "Dying with you doesn't sound so bad." Ruby thought, this kid is so strange. He could die with her, but he didn't want to be with her anymore.